Hey, it's me, Zilic. Well, I'm in the mood for some Nintendo Switch related stuff, so let's talk about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's DLC, The Hidden Treasure of Area Zero. Part 1, the Teal Mask, and Part 2, the Indigo Disc. I enjoyed these DLCs a ton. Sure, Scarlet and Violet themselves has hiccups here with bugs and glitches, but no game's perfect, right? And let's not forget, even titles like Skyrim and Cyberpunk 2077 were and still are notorious for their bugs. Even the original Red and Blue, yet people still rave about them. Just look at this. The base game itself, Scarlet and Violet, have so much to offer for my funny brain. The gameplay is engaging, the storyline is captivating, and the new Pokemon are simply fascinating. Now, the graphics might not be the most mind-blowing you've ever seen. They may not be on par with those jaw-dropping, eye-popping visuals we've come to expect from some other games, though in my perspective, graphics aren't everything. It's the heart and soul of a game that truly matters, and Scarlet and Violet does have that actually. They're pretty cool, underrated if you ask me. Yeah, they have their flaws, especially when it comes to online stuff and unions. But the controls are very smooth, and the new Pokemon are adorable. I've got my favorites like Meowscarada, Higneton, and Toadstool. I love this magic sneaky kitty. But of course, I am here to talk mostly about the two downloadable contents. More so Indigo Disc, but I believe Teal Mask is great too. Moving on, during 2023 we got Pokemon Presents revealing these funny creatures, Ogerpon and Terrapagos. Ogerpon having this piece of art during the year hiding her face, but now she's cute. This is great and all, but how about the audience's reaction on the trailer? Well, most were interested though, still considering that the base game has its flaws, which made most worry how the DLC would affect the game itself. Me, however, whenever I see something official, Pokemon related, I make sure to not expect 5 new games in one on it. But that's beside the point. I understand why people would be concerned about that. Teal Mask's release date is September 13. I'm sure everyone with Switch was interested in this back then. Then I don't know, Mythforce? I think it looks interesting. The new characters look amazing too. I love them a ton. Both human and Pokemon design respectively. And speaking of, let's talk about the introduced Pokemon of the DLC, Diplin, an evolution of Applin. Applin evolves into this when you give it a syrupy apple, and evolve again in the Indigo Disc, which I'll talk about later. It's a nice candy apple version of Applin. Tasty. Poltergeist, a grass ghost type, first shown with its own trailer. It's Mocha, alright. Green and all. Sinity and this may look alike, but they're actually different species, of having a form with a little mark at the bottom. Now for its evolution, Sinistcha. Not to be confused with Sinity or Poltergeist or Sinistcha. Sinistcha evolves from Poltergeist, from whether it is exposed to an unremarkable teacup or a masterpiece teacup. I also like that it uses a whisk like a hat. Blood Moon Ursaluna, a form of Ursaluna from the Legends Arceus games, which is a new evolution for Ursaring. Evolutionception. Its Blood Moon form doesn't evolve for now though. Okie dokie. One of the Loyal 3. It looks like a dog version of Incineroar, but as a poison fighting type. Nice looking design too. It's a funny green dog. Monkey Dory. Another one of the Loyal 3. Being a poison psychic type this time. Looks like the toxic chain decides their typing. And last of the Loyal 3, Fezandipede. This fancy pheasant here. The Loyal 3 are all male, as well as their names being the animal they're based on and a saying. They also take an interesting role in the Teal Mask story. I'll talk about the role when I get there. And last one of the Part 1 Pokemon, Ogerpon. My favorite one introduced here. A cute ogre that also looks like an orange. Designed by Hitoshi Ariga. Same guy who made Pokemon such as Aegislash and Sneasler. I love Ogerpon. Unfortunately, I didn't really obtain too much footage of Teal Mask's story while playing, so I'll go ahead and use BeardBear's walkthrough. I'll use what I have thoroughly. Thank you. This story is a bit short, and I want to talk about Indigo Disc even more, so why not? You have been handpicked for a super cool trip to a place called Kirikami in the east. Kirikami is based around the Tohoku region, Japan. And you meet Briar, a teacher from Naranja Academy's sister school, Blueberry Academy in Unova. Once you arrive to Masui Town, you meet these local siblings, Carmen and Kieran, who are also students at Blueberry Academy. Carmen suggests you team up with Kieran, and off you go. These signboards tell the story of the Loyal Three, a trio of Pokemon who sacrificed their lives against fighting a ogre years ago. Now here's the twist. Kieran, unlike his sister, is actually a fan of said ogre. So he takes off to the supposed home of this ogre, the Dread Den on Oni Mountain. Seems cozy enough. There will be a festival tomorrow. Next day, during the celebration, you and Carmen see some random kid, which turns out to be the Ogrepon. She's adorable without her mask. The next day, you show the mask to Kieran and his grandfather Yukito, and we get the story of Ogrepon and the Loyal Three. Once upon a time, there was a man who traveled into the Kitakami with his Pokemon Ogrepon, but the people in the village kicked him out, and they had to live up in Oni Mountain. The mask maker in the village actually felt bad for them, so he made these fancy masks with jewels that the man had brought. With these masks, they could finally join in on the village festival without freaking everyone out. 3 Pokemon decided to attack the man and snatch 3 of the masks he was trying to protect. Ogrepon was all fired up, so she put on the last remaining mask, tracked down all those thieving Pokemon. The people in the village have no clue what went down. They thought those Pokemon that sacrificed themselves to protect them from the bad ogre, so they gave them a fancy title, the Loyal Three. But little did they know, the Loyal Three were actually the villains. After that's over, Ogrepon went back to her mountain home all by herself, and that was the last anyone ever saw of her. The teal mask got a little banged up when it was dropped. Yukito will fix it, so it'll be fine. Kieran had overheard his grandpa's story and feels betrayed about it. The next day, at the top of Oni Mountain, Briar appears and talks about how the crystals emit energy just like the terrestrial phenomenon. She's all excited about it using it outside of Paldea. Back to Masui Town, Carmen finds out that Kieran has gone and swiped the teal mask. To settle the score, Kieran challenges you to a battle for the mask. A battle later, he punches the Loyal 3 monument and then hands over the teal mask and runs away. Suddenly, a burst of lightning comes up from the monument, and guess who shows up? Now it's up to you and Carmen to find the Loyal 3 and retrieve the masks, while Kieran decides to stay behind. After obtaining the mask, Kieran tells everyone to head back to Masui Town. Apparently, he managed to convince the townspeople that Ogrepon is actually a good little ogre. Moving on to Ogrepon's home, she wants to join on some adventures. So Kieran wants Ogrepon to be his Pokemon. After defeating him in a battle, Kieran is so upset that he runs off once again. After one more battle with Carmen, you find out that Briar, Carmen, and Kieran are heading back to Blueberry Academy early because of the big thing happening in the Great Crater Paldea. Carmen invites you to come visit them later, and that's the teal mask. Oh, and the side quest I want to show you with photographer Perrin and Blood Moon Ursaluna. It's a cool little nod to Legends Arceus, and Perrin is adorable. Personally, I like the teal mask. I love how Kitakami looks, the characters as well. I also love how much personality Ogrepon has and how others react to her, like Kieran. He's like an emo-ish Wally from Ruby and Sapphire. And Carmen, she's neat too. She gets more interesting in the second part of the DLC, I feel. I can't help but to think about Ogerpon a ton, and the forward mask forms as well. Teal, Wellspring, Heathflame, and Cornerstone. Interestingly enough, there's actually a fourth member of the Loyal 3, which I'll get into when I get done talking about part 2, the Indigo Disc. Luckily, it'll be more personal since I actually have footage of it, which is great since as much as I like the Teal mask, like I said earlier, I believe the Indigo Disc is what makes the DLC worth it. The notorious glitches, surprisingly in my playthroughs, are fairly uncommon. Don't get me wrong, they're there, but not too much. I think the big glitches people see are from the multiplayer mode side of things. Scarlet and Violet's base game also looks alright, though Kitakami looks strangely better in my opinion, since Paldea looks more like a big mesh. I'd say it's because Paldea is much more larger, so its performance getting tipped down is a bit more noticeable. Scarlet and Violet aren't lookers, but I appreciate the other aspects of them, Teal mask included. Now, let's turn our attention to the Indigo Disc. Most say the Indigo Disc is where the DLC really shines, taking us to Blueberry Academy in Unova. Now, where in Unova is this place? Why, in the middle of the ocean, of course. There was another trailer just after the Teal Mask one, which is this one. Hey look, all the stars are back. Sea Lion! And that's when I knew I'm going to love the Indigo Disc. They have all my favorite stars now, and I can have my personal trio in one game. Nothing like a cat, rabbit, and sea lion to hang around with. I love all the stars very much, and that they're even making online tarot raids of them. Star Pokemon are like a gateway to the larger world in Pokemon games. It sparks a lifelong passion for me, and or your favorite Pokemon. Alright, where were we? Oh yeah, blueberries. Now what makes the Indigo Disc enjoyable in my perspective? Well, it brought many more features. There's the item printer. Blueberry quests, or BBQs for short, tasty. They may get repetitive depending on the quest, but it's a fun way to get battle points. By completing quests, you can acquire past legendary Pokemon, though they're tailored to a specific game version. Engaging in cooperative play for group quests within a union allows you to obtain version-exclusive legendaries from the other game. New camera settings too, and cool new areas divided in 4 biomes. Who needs environmental logic when you can be in the coastal biome and then a polar area a few minutes later? Alright, you know what time it is. Let me show you the new Pokemon introduced here. Archulodon. A new evolution of Duraludon from the previous generation, but now it evolves with a metal alloy, involving a building into a bridge. How cool is that? Just don't let PewDiePie catch his thing. Hydrapple. Diplin's evolution, in which it evolves by learning Dragon Cheer. Hydrapple and Diplin have the unique ability to learn the move Syrup Bomb. It seems that the developers are focusing on the competitive aspect of these new Pokemon, which adds an intriguing dimension to their design. Gouging Fire, a Paradox Pokemon. It is the great fusion of
What even is that?
And
Why, that's awesome.
this legendary beast is like if Entei, a dinosaur, and a bulldog had a wild party and this majestic monstrosity stumbled out the next morning, ready to set the world ablaze with Burning Bulwark, its signature move. Raging Bolt, the hilariously long Paradox Pokemon. I heard it's strong in competitive play, with a neck that's longer than a giraffe's grocery list. The total uniqueness that Raging Bolt has is what makes this Paradox Pokemon my favorite out of all of them. I love Long Raikou. Iron Boulder, a robotic counterpart of Terrakion. Iron Boulder's reflective body makes it the perfect Pokemon for mirror selfies, but be careful. Its rotating head might leave you dizzy enough to mistake yourself for its trainer. Just remember, when Iron Boulder takes a nap, it's not snoozing, it's just rebooting its orange energy into stealth mode. Iron Crown, another robotic counterpart. This time it's Cobalion. Iron Crown kind of looks like Centaur from Shin Megami Tensei, but more futuristic. Terrapagos, the cover legendary. It has not 1, not 2, but 3 forms with its Terra Shift ability. It seamlessly shifts from its normal form to its terrestrial form, then dazzles with its stellar form. It's hard to say how surprised I got when I saw the stellar type. Oh yeah, the introduction of the stellar type in Gen 9 adds a cosmic twist to Pokemon battles, with Terrapagos taking center stage as the creator of this phenomenon. With moves exclusive to terrestrialized Pokemon, the stellar type brings a whole new dimension to strategy, especially with its super effectiveness against other Terra Pokemon. Terrapagos makes the story of the Indigo Disc and the main game itself more interesting and impactful. I really like how the Pokemon correlates with the story, which makes the terrestrial phenomenon even more interesting. And speaking of story, let me show you the story of Indigo Disc. I have some footage of it too, so it'll be much more personalized. Still gonna pull some from BeardBear again, but still. So after all the chaos that went down in Kitakami, you get invited to Blueberry Academy over in Unova. Serrano, the boss there, approved since Carmen put in a good word. Oh hey, Lacey's here. Anyways, once you roll up onto this academy, they show you this wild terrarium. This huge dome over the sea with different Pokemon in different habitats, all due to the terrarium core. Carmen talks about her brother, Kieran. He went too cool to obsess with being on the top and being a little angry. He's all about taking you down. Then you cross paths with Drayton, who's part of the Academy's Elite Four. He tells you about this Blueberry League they got going on, kinda like a Pokemon League, with Kieran being the big boss now. Drayton's like, hey, you should give it a shot. Oh hey, Synchro, you can become your Pokemon. This is by far my favorite thing in the DLC. First up is Crispin, the fire type guy. This trial involves making a super spicy sandwich. Next up is Emarace, the steel type Elite Four. I love the flying time trial, it's very fun, and allows your legendary to fly around also. Time for Lacey, with a cute little quiz game, and she even has a Primarina. That's why she's my favorite member. She was tough in my playthrough. Her name is pretty fitting, since I felt like I was laced with fairy dust. Lastly is Drayton. His trial is about battling with only Pokemon found on the terrarium. He is the toughest one, by far. After you mop the floor with them, it is time to face off against Kieran, who is looking a little cranky with a new hairstyle. You take him down and become the new champion of the Academy. His ego takes a hit, to say the least. After your big win, we get invited to this meetup with Briar. She's stoked to explore Area Zero, this crazy crater in Paldea. She's searching for this legendary Pokemon called Terrapagos. Before we go, former Paldean champion Gita and Elite Four member Rika hands this funky artifact called the Indigo Disc. Off to Area Zero we go, and to the lab in the base game, where the Indigo Disc comes in handy, taking us deeper into the cave. And wow, this place is very atmospheric. At the bottom, we find Terrapagos. But Kieran snags it first. Typical. But when things get dicey and Terrapagos goes berserk, Kieran finally realizes he's gotta team up with you to take it down. After a battle, things have been sorted out, and Kieran's cool with you getting Terrapagos. We head back to the Blueberry Academy, and that's a wrap on the main story of the DLC. I had so much fun with Blueberry Academy. Though, do you remember about the fourth member of the Loyal 3 that I brought up Well, I think this is the perfect time to tell you. Mochi Mayhem, the epilogue of the DLC. It was in the game, though wasn't released until January 10 of 2024. So picture this, a store called Peachy's, when suddenly I get a call from Arvin, asking to go at my place in Cabo Poco. Fast forward to me getting home, and guess who's there? Arvin, of course, but also Nimona and Penny, bring the gang back together. Oh look, a letter from Kieran. Announcing he's taking a hiatus from Blueberry Academy. And he's in Masui Town. Plus we got tickets to go see him. We proceed to Masui Town, and Nimona, plus her competitive soul, challenges Kieran to a battle. She wipes the floor with him before I can even grab some popcorn. And just when things couldn't get much stranger, here comes Carmen, doing this bizarre mochi dance. Kieran thinks she's cursed or something. I mean, well... Next thing we know, we're on a wild goose chase for a TV remote in the community center, because obviously that's the top priority when there's a mysterious curse going around. But then Nimona disappears into thin air, so me and Kieran go searching. Then we stumble upon a whole parade of villagers acting like they ate too much mochi. And speaking of mochi, Kieran's grandpa Yukito takes a bite of some shady stuff and joins the possessed party, along with his wife. Talk about family drama. After kicking some possessed peaches, and just when we think it's over, Arvin and Penny calls us up possessed by some mochi-flinging Pokemon. Oh look, a foot fight. Hey, it's Petron, the fourth member of Loyal 3, the one I was talking about. Then we duke it out in a multi-battle. Then chase after the mythical Pokemon Petron. It's chaos in Loyalty Plaza, with possessed villagers coming at us like zombies. Kieran's playing the hero while I take on possessed Nimona. After I win, I face off with Petron itself. Time to catch the little purple guy. And wow, everyone snaps out of their mochi-induced trance. We chill in Kikami for a bit, and then it's back to reality. I take a trip back to Kitakami. And by some freaky magic, Tarpago shows up. Along with Professor Sada. We swap books, then poof, she's gone. Now that was the Indigo Disc and the epilogue of the whole DLC, back in November of 2022. I proudly snagged the game on release date. I recall chatting with the GameStop cashier about the exclusive Pokemon on Scarlet. You know me, they had me at Pokemon. So naturally, I chose Scarlet over Violet, because I like the exclusive Pokemon more than Violet. Now, before you accuse me of being a walking billboard for the game, just bear in mind, I try my best to say how I truly feel. We all grew up differently and developed various viewpoints, so it's crucial to acknowledge our diverse backgrounds and perspective when talking about our thoughts. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, despite their buggy reputation, are like that one quirky friend who always brings mayhem to the party but ends up making it unforgettable. Sure, they might trip over their own feet sometimes, but among the wackiness, they've introduced quality of life improvements that make navigating the Pokemon world smoother, even if the frames drop from time to time, especially with a storyline that hooks you in, like binge watching a show, to the satisfying return of classic features that feel like reuniting with old pals. These games are a wild ride, with enough laughs to keep you from coming back for more, bugs and all. The music, as usual, was very catchy and well done, especially Petrun's battle theme. I feel the same way for the DLCs, both more ogres and sea lions, of course. It may not have improved on the base game massively, but it did give its own content that I enjoyed a ton. If someone found it lackluster, then that's okay. It's not for everyone, but it is for me. Pokemon is a franchise that has and still impacted people, one way or another. Like many other multimedia franchises, it matters not just because of its commercial success, but because of the connections it creates. Modern Pokemon is, well, modern Pokemon. Soon it will be less modern, and people may look back at it fondly, like with Black and White. Which is why I'm sure that the reason why Indigo Disc is set in Unova, it is because it's catering to those who grew up with Gen 5. But hold on, because apparently the community, says Game Freak and the Pokemon Company, are puckering up to Black and White games. But I'm here scratching my head thinking, isn't the community that's doing all the good kissing towards Gen 5? I think Gen 5 does a lot of things right, but the amount of people saying that Pokemon Black and White along with their sequels are quote-unquote the only good Pokemon games is honestly upsetting to see. It undermines what the series is supposed to be, a vibrant world teeming with diverse creatures, endless adventures, and the unbreakable bond between trainers, other trainers, and their Pokemon. Whenever it's for battles, collecting, or just exploring around. Pokemon, as a concept, has always been a game about just exploring around and spotting creatures. That's the main point of the games. Sure, there are other topics related to games that people are interested in, like competitive play, for example, and that fits the bond between trainers and other trainers idea that I previously said. I'm hoping what I said makes sense. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, to me, is a very fun game, and the DLC made it even more enjoyable, despite it also having graphical issues. The Hidden Treasure of Area Zero, Part 1, the Teal Mask, and Part 2, the Indigo Disc, brings a charming storyline, along with some cool Pokemon, even the ones I love so dearly. Even if it has issues such as graphics or bugginess, I still think it is a step up. Even with its cons, it isn't something to give up on the whole franchise on. It's not a masterpiece, but it's not a disaster either. It is a rough step forward, but a step forward with many great ideas. I'll be going now. See ya.